Welcome to Shadow of the Erdtree. This is a video about the first hour of gameplay in the DLC. We're going to be going over the Red Bull Levels gameplay preview they've just recently released, and we're going to be looking at a bunch of stuff here, including some of the brand new mechanics and difficulty options. Why are enemies so damn difficult and so different in this DLC? It's the reason why people are saying this DLC is actually completely different from the original game. We're also going to be having a look at all the brand new weapon types, not all of them, but a lot of them. And also we're going to be having a look at some new spells and incantations. And obviously some brand new weapons, summons, talismans, and some more interesting things on this gameplay. So as we look at this area right here, the Gravesites Plain, this is the starting area of the DLC once you touch Miquella's hand in Mog's Palace. Now this is the area that you're going to see this big fire giant's brand new boss enemy that we've seen plenty of times, and in this area is going to find your first ever Site of Grace. And this is actually where you pick up the brand new mechanic called the Erdtree Blessing. Basically what this is going to do is going to allow you to deal more damage but take less damage in the Shadow Realm, is where the DLC is actually located. Now this doesn't work outside of the DLC, only inside, and you can find these that are going to be scattered all over the Shadow Realm. So all you have to do with these is basically just sit down at a Site of Grace, and you can go ahead in the menu right there, the Shadow Realm Blessing, and upgrade your damage outputs and your incoming damage. So overall, you're gonna definitely need this because in the Shadow Realm, the enemies are completely different. Why? Well, because they can use abilities that bosses can use as well. So you're gonna see in the background gameplay right now of a normal enemy using like Radagon's slam that you fight at the end of the original game. You see enemies using Malekith's abilities, so pretty damn interesting to see normal enemies that are just going to be roaming around the world using pretty damn powerful attacks against you. So taking less damage but dealing more damage in the Shadow Realm in the DLC is definitely going to be something you want to go ahead and do. Now let's have a look at some brand new weapon types that we're going to be having a go in the DLC. Now these are just going to be normal weapons. These aren't being dropped from bosses or side quests or, you know, anything you're going to have to go your way and do to get them. These are just brand new normal weapons. Like the Light Greatsword. This is a standard / piercing sword which has a brand new Ash of War, and it's called Wing Stance, which you're going to be seeing gameplay of the background in right now. This looks very, very cool. I've actually been wanting a sword just like this when I was just playing Elden Ring again, and I couldn't really find something that's pretty damn big and quite light, which is definitely the playstyle that I want to go for. So this is definitely something I'm very, very interested in. So in the background, you can see there's a few different attacks that you can do with this weapon. Sometimes you can actually just swing this weapon around and do some pretty good flurry attacks, just like Melania does, but a little bit different. So in here, you can see that he actually jumps and then goes for an attack, which is again quite of a fast but heavy moveset that does a lot of damage. So this is definitely going to be a favorite weapon type for a lot of people, and it's going to bring in a new way to play the game and a whole new weapon style. Let's have a look at the Heavy Backhand Blade. This is a / piercing weapon again, and it's got an Ash of War called Blind Spot. Now this one is definitely another favorite of mine. It's definitely a playstyle that I would love. It's kind of like an assassin type of weapon, and he basically holds them by the hilt and keeps them behind him, and it's just kind of like a very fast assassin / quick slashing weapon type, which definitely seems quite interesting. It's definitely going to be one of the faster play styles that you're going to be going and trying. And here we have the brand new combat style you're going to be able to do, which is more or less martial arts. This is the Heavy Dryleaf Arts. Now again, this isn't anything special. This is just a normal one that you're going to be able to find. Obviously hand-to-hand strike combat with an Ash of War called the Dryleaf Whirlwind. Now, you've seen these in the trailer, which actually looks pretty cool. There's definitely going to be a lot of play styles and a lot of players that are going to be interested in basically just going hand to hand with a lot of enemies and especially bosses. Now, yeah, this is definitely something that I will go ahead and try out. It's a different type of playstyle in the Souls series. Next up is another one called the Red Bear's Claw, which has an Ash of War called the Red Bear Hunt. Now, there isn't actually any gameplay with the Red Bear's Claw, but once I do get my hands on the DLC, I'll definitely show you guys what this entails. Now, this one is going to come of interest to a lot of people if you want to be a perfumer that we've seen in the past in the original game. This is a new playstyle where, again, you just basically become a perfumer style. The Firespark perfume bottle is a new way to play the game. So obviously, becoming a perfumer, you're going to be quite up and close to enemies and bosses and stuff like that. So yeah, this playstyle does do a lot of damage that you can see in the gameplay that you're watching right now. Now, obviously, there's going to be a bunch of different styles and a bunch of different spells that you're going to be doing with this. A lot of it, this seems to be fire-based, but maybe we're going to get some ice, fire, poison, a lot of different spells that can come with playing a perfumer. Another interesting weapon type is called a Smith Script. Now, this is a heavy Sim Scripts Great Hammer. A heavy Smith Script Great Hammer is kind of a weird one to say. But yeah, this is basically just a giant Great Hammer. Which the cool thing about this weapon is you can spin it and throw it at your enemies. Yeah, definitely something of an interesting way to play the game. You're just basically throwing these giant hammers at enemies. How different is this going to be and how strong this is actually going to be against certain bosses? We're just going to have to wait and see, but definitely something interesting, I guess. Yeah, and obviously you can use this weapon just like a normal heavy weapon, but yeah, something different. And again, this is another heavy Smith Script axe. This is just like the one we've seen previously, but this one is just an axe. Next up we have is a spear that you can throw. Next up, let's have a look at the Dueling Shield. This is a shield that you can actually thrust with. So not only can you use the shield to protect yourself while using another weapon, you can use the shield as a weapon. So you can basically dual wield while using a shield, which is pretty damn cool. Now, shields weren't really used as much in the original game, so they're probably thinking of ways so people can go ahead and try some shields out. So yeah, it definitely looks very, very powerful against this brand new boss called the Curseblade Labyrinth. How strong is this actually going to be against everything else? Well, we're just gonna have to wait and see. Next up is the Fire Knight's Keen Great Sword. This is a brand new weapon type as well. The Asheville is called the Flame Spear. Now this thing is basically just one giant sword, which looks very, very cool. Definitely not my type of playstyle. The bigger, heavier, slower weapons isn't really something that I'm a very big fan of, but this thing does look pretty interesting, especially with the fire ability that it does, and you can thrust with it. You can play at a distance while causing some serious damage. Definitely going to be a favorite to a lot of people, especially you strength users. You guys scare me. Next up we have is a Great Katana, a heavy Great Katana, a weapon type that we've never actually seen before in Elden Ring except for the Nagakiba, which is basically just a long katana, but this is definitely something interesting. This is a huge heavy Great Katana. Yeah, a slower katana, probably going to be doing a bunch of damage. Next up we have a heavy halberd weapon type with an Asheville called the Aspects of the Crucible Wings, which is another weapon from the Crucible Knights, and yeah, seems pretty cool. Again, not my type of playstyle, but a lot of you guys might find it interesting. And next up we have the Sacred Smith Script Daggers, which is another throwable weapon type. And yeah, we've seen these in the trailer before, basically just an unlimited amount of throwing knives, which is pretty cool. Definitely gonna be a fan favorite, especially on how powerful throwing knives are in the game as it is. Let's have a look at some of the brand new spells and incantations. First off is the Gravitational Missile. This is a purple, basically void ball that you can go ahead and throw at enemies, and it seems to basically stick to enemies and just explodes, causing a huge area of effect and basically just pushing enemies, dealing a lot of damage. So yeah, all you wizards out there, you're gonna absolutely love this weapon, especially for the people that use lightning builds and spells and stuff. Yeah, it's gonna be something pretty cool. Next up is the Glintstone Nail. This thing is, again, a simple spell, but definitely looks pretty cool. Again, nothing really too interesting. It seems more towards the PvP style, maybe. It doesn't seem that powerful, but well, I don't know, we might be surprised on how this works. As you can see in the background, there's two different styles, one that shoots one bolt and one that shoots basically a huge flurry of them, but we'll see how that works in the future. Next up is the Roar of Regulia, which is basically just like the dragon incantations that we've seen, but with a bear. Next up is the Divine Bird Feathers. This is just a flurry of a bunch of feathers that we've seen previously. I'm pretty sure we have seen this in the past, but again, doesn't really seem that it's doing that much damage. But I think it's going to be pretty good at breaking stances and just basically getting the enemies and bosses to their knees so you can go ahead and finish them off. Next up is the Knight's Lightning Spear, which looks pretty cool, and basically just another throwable spear incantations that we have seen in the past, but this definitely looks quite different, especially with the big one that you throw, then the other small ones that spawn besides you and just all go towards the enemy. Definitely seems very, very powerful, and one that a lot of people are going to be using. Next up is Aspects of the Crucible. Once again, this one is the Bloom. So what this does is basically just spawn the flower from your chest, and it just fires down a bunch of different attacks that we've seen from the flower enemies in, like, for example, the underground parts of the city, and sometimes in Kayla's and Limgrave as well. So I mean, it doesn't really seem that great, but who knows. And here we have the Pest Thread Spear. This is definitely something a little bit different to what we've seen in the past. This basically just shoots out a bunch of spears from the inside of your body. You just kind of like explode and it just shoots out these weird things from your body. And then for the one we have here, it's called Miriam's Vanishing. This one is kind of weird. Basically like a teleporting spell that you can go ahead and use to get out of enemy attacks, especially for bosses that are going to be, you know, a bit more aggressive. You can just use it to quickly get out of your place that you are in the boss fight. Now let's have a look at some of the talismans that were shown. This one is called the Blade of Mercy. Now they didn't really go into detail about this, but apparently from what they said, that this actually works with critical hits from your weapons. Now, if you've seen in the trailers before, another thing that I want to actually mention are the symbols / crosses made of gold that you've seen. This is more or less footsteps for Miquella, just leading us on the way to go throughout the DLC. Just follow the crosses and it will lead you through the game. Just want to actually mention as well, in the background you can see right now that defeating some of these enemies will end up dropping you some smithing stones, which is quite useful. Obviously in the past, smithing stones were a bit difficult to come across, but now you can be able to just basically farm them from these enemies, which is yeah, going to be useful for a lot of players, especially newer players. Just want to mention also another summon that you're going to see in the background right now. After defeating the Cursed Blade, you actually get the summon for the Cursed Blade Mirror, which is actually pretty cool. See how powerful that is when the game does come out. Is it going to be better than your Mimic? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. Anyway, that has been my tip for this video. As soon as I get my hands on the game, there's going to be a bunch of videos that I will be making every single day for you guys, coming from guides and tutorials and builds and all the great stuff about basically everything in the DLC. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all on the next one.